I'm Meredith Henderson, 32, and I woke up in the ICU with tubes everywhere and pain radiating through my body. The beeping machines were my only companions as I desperately tried to reach my parents for the third time. Critical medical decisions needed to be made, but my calls went straight to voicemail. The nurse Taylor looked at me sympathetically. "Still no response from your emergency contacts?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. If you're watching this, please drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to like and subscribe as I share how my family's betrayal changed everything. Growing up in Chicago as the eldest daughter of Frank and Diana Henderson wasn't the heartwarming family experience shown in television commercials. I learned early that my achievements would always be overshadowed by my younger sister Rebecca's demands. While I pursued interior design with passion and determination, my parents' attention remained fixed on Rebecca's every whim. Our family dynamic was established when Rebecca was born 5 years after me. Initially, I was excited to have a baby sister, imagining us becoming best friends. Reality proved drastically different. As Rebecca grew, she developed an uncanny ability to create drama that demanded immediate attention. My parents, particularly my mother, responded with unwavering devotion that bordered on obsession. The pattern became undeniable during my high school years. I had maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout high school while working part-time at a local design store. My graduation party, which my parents reluctantly agreed to host, was supposed to celebrate this achievement. I had invited my closest friends and a few teachers who had supported my academic journey. The party was progressing wonderfully until Rebecca, then 13, realized she wasn't the center of attention. Within minutes, she knocked over the cake table, sending my graduation cake crashing to the floor. Rather than addressing her behavior, my parents rushed to comfort her accidental mishap. I spent the remainder of my celebration cleaning frosting off the floor while my guests awkwardly tried to salvage the mood. "She's just a teenager, Meredith. You need to be more understanding," my mother chided when I expressed my disappointment later. College offered temporary escape. I attended Rhode Island School of Design on scholarship, determined to build my career without family support. The distance provided relief, but familiar patterns continued. During my college graduation, I scanned the audience repeatedly, looking for my parents who had promised to attend. They never showed. Later that evening, I received a text. "So sorry, sweetie. Rebecca's dance recital ran long, and she was too upset to miss the after party. We'll make it up to you." The dance recital was a middle school performance where Rebecca had a minor role. These incidents weren't isolated events, but rather threads in a tapestry of favoritism that defined our family. Rebecca mastered the art of manufacturing emergencies precisely when my life reached important milestones. My first design award, my gallery opening, my business launch, all were moments when Rebecca mysteriously faced crises requiring immediate parental intervention. After college, I established firm boundaries. I moved to Boston, putting physical distance between us and limited contact to holidays and occasional phone calls. In Boston, my career flourished. I built Henderson Interiors from a one-woman consultancy to a respected firm with corporate clients and magazine features. My life expanded beyond the constraints of family disappointment. The most significant addition to my life was Stephanie Powell, whom I met during a charity design event. She quickly became the sister I had always wanted, supportive, genuinely interested in my success, and present during both celebrations and challenges. Her family welcomed me for holidays when I couldn't face returning to Chicago, showing me what healthy family relationships could look like. "Blood doesn't define family," Stephanie often reminded me. "Actions do." For nearly 5 years, this arrangement worked. I built my life in Boston while maintaining cordial but distant relationships with my parents and Rebecca. Then, last year, everything shifted when my father experienced a minor heart attack. The health scare rattled me more than expected. Despite years of emotional neglect, I couldn't ignore the possibility of losing my father. I flew to Chicago immediately, arriving at the hospital before Rebecca, who was too distraught to drive herself there. During my 2-week stay in Chicago, I attempted reconciliation. I coordinated my father's follow-up appointments, organized his medications, and even researched heart-healthy diet options. My mother expressed appreciation, and for brief moments, I glimpsed what our relationship could have been. After returning to Boston, I maintained more regular contact. Weekly phone calls, occasional video chats, and more frequent visits created an illusion of improvement. I even listed them as emergency contacts when updating my information at my primary care physician's office, a decision I would soon regret profoundly. Family is complicated, my therapist Dr. Harrison had warned during our sessions. Just because they're doing better doesn't mean they've changed fundamentally. Her words would prove prophetic sooner than I could have imagined. The day that changed everything began ordinarily enough. Boston was experiencing one of those spring rainstorms that transformed the city into a watercolor painting, beautiful to observe from inside but treacherous to navigate. I had just left a client meeting downtown and was heading back to my office when it happened. The intersection of Commonwealth and Arlington was slick with rain. I waited for the light to turn green, then proceeded cautiously. I never saw the SUV coming. Later, police reports would show the other driver was texting while driving, completely missing the red light as he barreled through the intersection at nearly 40 miles per hour. The impact was explosive. Metal crunched against metal as my sedan spun violently. The airbag deployed with stunning force, slamming against my chest and face. Glass shattered around me as the car careened into a light pole. Pain erupted everywhere simultaneously, sharp, blinding agony that made breathing impossible. Then came the voices, distant and echoing. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Don't move. Ambulance is coming." Consciousness flickered like a faulty light bulb. Fragments of awareness rain on my face, the metallic taste of blood, sirens wailing, paramedics working urgently. Someone mentioned a collapsed lung. Another voice noted possible internal bleeding. The words floated around me without connecting into coherent thoughts. BP dropping. Need to move now. Mass General. The ambulance ride remains a blur of motion, pain, and frantic activity. I remember a paramedic named Kyle holding my hand, telling me to stay with him. I tried focusing on his voice as darkness threatened to swallow me whole. My next clear memory is waking in the ICU. The rhythmic beeping of machines, the antiseptic smell, and the feeling of tubes everywhere disoriented me completely. A nurse, Taylor, according to her name badge, noticed my consciousness returning and immediately approached. "Meredith? I'm Taylor, your ICU nurse. You've been in an accident and you're at Massachusetts General Hospital. Try not to move, you have several serious injuries." My throat felt raw from intubation, making speech difficult. Taylor offered ice chips while explaining my condition. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung that had collapsed, internal bleeding that required emergency surgery, and a compound fracture in my right leg. The injuries were severe but survivable with proper treatment. Dr. Garcia, the lead physician, visited shortly after. With a calm but serious demeanor, he explained that while the emergency surgery had addressed the immediate bleeding, they needed to perform additional procedures to fully repair my lung and leg. "We need consent for these procedures," he explained. "Ideally from you, but given the medications you're on and your condition, having family involved in these decisions would be better. Is there someone we should contact?" I provided my parents' contact information, certain that a medical emergency would finally merit their undivided attention. Taylor assured me they would be contacted immediately. Hours passed with no word from my family. Each time Taylor or another nurse entered, I asked if they'd reached my parents. Each time, the answer was negative. "They're not answering," Taylor eventually admitted. "We've left multiple voicemails explaining the urgency. Is there someone else we could try?" Stephanie would have been there in a heartbeat, but she was on a business trip in Japan, unreachable for another 12 hours at minimum. I had no other family, and my closest friends in Boston weren't appropriate for medical decisions of this magnitude. "Keep trying my parents," I insisted, my voice barely above a whisper. "My father had a heart condition last year. Maybe they're at a doctor's appointment." As the day progressed, my condition worsened. The pain medication couldn't fully mask the agony radiating through my chest with each breath. Dr. Garcia returned with increased concern. "Meredith, we can't wait much longer on the lung procedure," he explained. "The current chest tube is helping, but we need to surgically repair the damage. Without family here, we'll need you to make this decision." Through a haze of pain and medication, I signed the consent forms. As they prepared to take me to surgery, I made one final attempt to reach my parents, dialing with trembling fingers. Voicemail again. I left a message that I barely recognized as my own voice, desperate, frightened, and alone. "Mom, Dad, I'm in Mass General Hospital. I've been in a serious accident. They're taking me into surgery now. Please come. I need you." As the orderlies transferred me to the surgical gurney, I found myself wondering if Rebecca had somehow orchestrated another emergency that trumped my life-threatening situation. The thought followed me into anesthesia-induced darkness. Waking after the second surgery felt like clawing through layers of thick fog. The anesthesia lingered in my system, making my thoughts sluggish and disconnected. As awareness gradually returned, so did the pain, duller now, but persistently present in every breath. Taylor was still on shift, her familiar face a small comfort in the sterile environment. "Surgery went well," she informed me. "Dr. Garcia repaired the lung damage. Your vitals are stabilizing." My first coherent question surprised even me, my parents. Taylor's expression revealed the answer before her words confirmed it. "We still haven't been able to reach them. We've continued calling every few hours. 24 hours had passed since my admission. 24 hours of unanswered calls during a life-threatening emergency." The medical reality of my situation began to sink in as Dr. Garcia explained during his rounds. "The next 48 hours are critical," he said, reviewing my chart. "The risk of infection is significant, particularly with the lung repair. We'll monitor you closely in the ICU." That afternoon, complications emerged. My temperature spiked suddenly, indicating a possible infection. Additional antibiotics were administered through the 4, making me nauseous and disoriented. Through the misery, I continued asking about my parents. During a moment of clarity, I remembered my last conversation with them 3 weeks earlier. My father had called to give an update on his cardiac rehabilitation progress. "The doctor says I'm doing great, Meredith," he had said proudly. "Blood pressure's down, cholesterol's improving." "That's wonderful, Dad. I'm so glad you're taking it seriously." "Your mother's been a drill sergeant about my diet," he laughed. Between her and Rebecca watching every bite, I can't get away with anything. At the end of that call, I had mentioned a potential business trip to Chicago the following month. "That would be wonderful, sweetheart," my mother had interjected. "We miss you. And if you ever need anything, we're always here for you. That's what family is for." The bitter irony of those words haunted me as I lay in the ICU, fighting infection while they remained unreachable. The hospital's social worker, Jennifer Lee, visited on the second day. With gentle professionalism, she inquired about my support system and expressed concern about the absence of family. "Is there anyone else we could contact?" "Other relatives, perhaps." I shook my head weakly. "Just Stephanie, but she's abroad until tomorrow." Jennifer made notes in her tablet. "Sometimes family can be unpredictable during crises. Would you like me to try reaching them through alternative methods? Work numbers, perhaps?" I provided my father's office contact and my mother's cell phone, though I'd already tried the latter repeatedly. Jennifer promised to make those calls personally. The woman in the next ICU bay, separated only by a thin curtain, had overheard portions of our conversation. As Jennifer left, she spoke up. Family trouble, huh? I'm Elaine. Despite my condition, I found myself appreciating the human connection. Elaine was recovering from complicated gallbladder surgery and had 3 adult children who had been rotating visits constantly. My kids nearly got kicked out yesterday for bringing too many flowers, she chuckled. The nurses said they were creating a jungle. Her story of attentive children made my situation more painful by contrast, but her companionship provided distraction from the physical discomfort and emotional abandonment. During a restless period when pain prevented sleep, I found myself scrolling through social media on my phone, an activity the nurses discouraged but permitted briefly. That's when I saw it, Rebecca's Instagram story posted just hours earlier. The video showed her having an animated discussion with an interior designer in what appeared to be our parents' house. The caption read, "Home renovation decisions are so stressful. Thank goodness Mom and Dad are helping me choose the perfect paint colors for my new place. #blessed #family support." The timestamp indicated it had been posted during my second surgery. The phone nearly slipped from my trembling hand. They weren't answering because they were helping Rebecca with paint colors? The absurdity might have been laughable if it weren't so devastatingly hurtful. With renewed determination, I called my mother's number again. This time, I left a different kind of message. "Mom, it's Meredith. I can see on social media that you're helping Rebecca with paint colors. Meanwhile, I'm in intensive care at Mass General after 2 surgeries. The doctors are concerned about infection. I need you here. Please call the hospital immediately." 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text message, not a call, a text from my mother. "Meredith, sorry we missed your calls. Rebecca's been having a terrible crisis with her new condo renovation. The contractor made mistakes with everything and she's absolutely devastated. We'll try to call you tonight after we get things settled here. Hope you're doing better." The message didn't acknowledge the severity of my condition or indicate any change in their plans. My situation, life-threatening injuries, ICU, surgeries, infection risk, had been casually equated to Rebecca's paint-colored dissatisfaction. Something broke inside me at that moment. Not my body, which was already broken enough, but something fundamental in my understanding of family and obligation. The persistent hope that they might someday prioritize me, even in genuine emergency, evaporated completely. Through tears of pain and anger, I made a decision. If blood family wouldn't be there for me, I would seek help elsewhere. With shaking hands, I texted the one person who could help me protect myself from further emotional damage. "Marcus, it's Meredith Henderson. I'm in Mass General ICU after a serious accident. No family here. Need legal help urgently. Can you come?" Marcus Coleman had handled the legal aspects of my business for years. He was thorough, ethical, and most importantly, responded within minutes. "On my way." "Which ICU?" Marcus arrived at the ICU looking nothing like the stereotypical lawyer in expensive suits I was accustomed to seeing during our business meetings. Dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, he carried a leather messenger bag and wore an expression of genuine concern that nearly broke my composure. "Meredith," he said softly, approaching my bedside. My God, what happened? His reaction confirmed what I already suspected. I looked terrible. The collision had left visible bruising across my face and arms, and the medical equipment surrounding me painted a picture of serious trauma. Between labored breaths, I explained the accident, the surgeries, and the developing infection that had the medical team increasingly concerned. Marcus listened intently, occasionally making notes, but mostly focusing on understanding my condition. "And your family?" he finally asked, though his tone suggested he already anticipated the answer. "They're busy," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "My sister's having a paint color emergency at her new condo. Apparently, that takes precedence over multiple surgeries and possible sepsis." I showed him the text message from my mother. Marcus read it twice, his expression darkening. This isn't the first time, I continued, explaining the pattern of favoritism and neglect that had defined my family relationships. But it's certainly the last time I'll allow it to hurt me. Marcus set down his bag and pulled a chair closer. What do you need from me, Meredith? I'm not a personal injury attorney, but I can refer you to someone excellent for the accident case. That's not why I called you, I clarified. I need to make changes. Legal changes. About my family. For the next hour, Marcus and I had a strategy session unlike any of our previous business meetings. He outlined my legal options clearly. First, medical power of attorney. Currently, if you become incapacitated, your parents would likely make medical decisions for you. We can change that immediately. He continued methodically. Your will and estate planning documents would need revision if you want to remove your parents as beneficiaries. The trust we established for your business assets should also be reviewed. I want all of it changed, I said firmly. I want Stephanie as my medical proxy. For the estate, I'd like to establish provisions for some design school scholarships, with personal items going to Stephanie and a few close friends. Marcus took detailed notes. What about the accident itself? The driver who hit you should be held financially responsible for your medical expenses and damages. We discussed potential legal action against the distracted driver, though I clarified that wasn't my immediate concern. Right now, I needed to protect myself from the people who should have been protecting me. There's something else, I added hesitantly. I want you to document my condition and the timeline of events regarding my family's absence. Take photos, get copies of my medical charts showing admission time, surgery schedules, everything that proves I've been here fighting for my life while they've been ignoring my calls. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are you considering legal action against your family? Because emotional neglect, while deeply harmful, is difficult to litigate successfully. No, I clarified. I just want evidence. When they eventually show up and try to minimize the situation or make me feel guilty for being upset, I want indisputable proof of what happened. He nodded, understanding. Documentation without litigation. I can do that. With my permission, Marcus took photos of my condition and the ICU environment. He spoke briefly with Taylor about obtaining copies of relevant medical records, explaining his role as my legal representative. Our conversation then shifted to a more personal tone. Marcus had known me professionally for years, but had never been privy to my family dynamics. Family obligations are complicated, he acknowledged. I see it constantly in my practice, people struggling between self-protection and family loyalty. But Meredith, what they're doing isn't normal or acceptable, especially in these circumstances. His validation meant more than I expected. For years, I'd questioned whether my reactions to my family's behavior were justified or if I was being overly sensitive. I kept hoping they'd change, I admitted, fighting unexpected tears. Especially after Dad's heart issue last year. I thought maybe they'd realize life is fragile, that relationships matter. But nothing changed. I just lowered my standards for how they treat me. Marcus prepared the necessary documents on his laptop, printing them using the nurses' station facilities after explaining the situation. By early evening, I had signed new advance directives, medical power of attorney forms, and instructions for comprehensive revisions to my will and trust documents. I'll file these immediately, Marcus assured me. The medical directives take effect as soon as they're in the hospital system, which I'll ensure happens today. As he packed up to leave, I made one final request. Would you call my parents? Not as my friend, but as my attorney. Maybe they'll take that seriously. Marcus agreed without hesitation. I'll be clear about the severity of your condition and the legal changes you've made. Sometimes, unfortunately, people need to understand there are consequences to their actions or inactions. After he left, I felt simultaneously drained and empowered. The infection was making me increasingly feverish, but beneath the physical discomfort, I experienced the first sense of peace since the accident. I had taken control of what I could in a situation where so much remained beyond my control. That night, as my temperature climbed higher and the antibiotics were adjusted again, I drifted in and out of consciousness. In my more lucid moments, I reflected on previous family betrayals I had forgiven. The time my parents missed my first professional design award ceremony because Rebecca had a minor fender bender without injuries. The Christmas they gave Rebecca a new car while I received a department store gift card. The family vacation they forgot to invite me on because Rebecca needed special bonding time after her breakup. Each time, I had swallowed my hurt, made excuses for their behavior, and eventually forgiven them without any acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused. This cycle had continued for decades, training them to expect my endless forgiveness without accountability. That pattern would end now. As I fought infection in the ICU, I was also fighting for a future where I valued myself enough to demand basic respect and care from those who claimed to love me. The next morning brought a slight improvement in my condition. The fever had stabilized, though not decreased, and Dr. Garcia seemed cautiously optimistic during rounds. The antibiotics are holding the infection at bay, he explained. Not defeating it yet, but preventing it from worsening. That's a positive sign. I was too exhausted to feel much relief. The combination of physical trauma, emotional distress, and medication had left me depleted. I dozed intermittently throughout the morning, waking fully when Taylor gently touched my arm. Meredith, your lawyer called the nurse's station. He wanted you to know he spoke with your parents last night. Did he say how it went? I asked, my voice raspy from the breathing treatments. He just said they're aware of your condition now and that all your legal documents have been properly filed with the hospital. I nodded acknowledgement, too tired to press for details. Whatever Marcus had said, the ball was now in my parents' court. As the day progressed, my condition took another downturn. The infection fighting against the antibiotics caused my temperature to spike again, this time accompanied by concerning fluctuations in blood pressure. Dr. Garcia ordered additional medications and more frequent monitoring. We're considering a stronger antibiotic combination, he informed me during an unscheduled examination. There's some risk of kidney strain with this approach, but the infection isn't responding adequately to the current regimen. I consented to the treatment change, signing the forms with a shaking hand. The possibility of kidney complications seemed distant compared to the immediate threat of the infection spreading further. During a particularly difficult breathing treatment that afternoon, my mind wandered to previous family conflicts. One memory surfaced with painful clarity. My college graduation weekend, waiting alone at a restaurant where we had reservations, checking my phone repeatedly as the minutes ticked by. The eventual text from my mother, "So sorry, sweetie. Rebecca had a meltdown about her dance costume for tomorrow. Simply couldn't leave her. We'll celebrate your graduation next time you're home." I had paid for my own graduation dinner, eating alone while the neighboring tables filled with families celebrating their graduates. I never received the celebration they promised. This pattern had repeated so consistently that I could almost predict their responses. They would eventually show up at the hospital, express shock at my condition, then subtly shift the narrative to minimize their absence and emphasize Rebecca's needs. They would expect immediate forgiveness without genuine accountability. And historically, I would have granted it. Not this time. By early evening, the new antibiotics had begun their work, bringing slight relief from the fever. I was sitting partially upright, attempting to eat some broth, when Taylor appeared with an update. Your parents just called the nurse's station. They're on their way, about 30 minutes out. 36 hours after my admission. 36 hours of surgeries, fever, infection, and isolation. 36 hours of unanswered calls during a life-threatening emergency. Thank you, I responded neutrally, setting aside the barely touched broth. Would you like me to help you freshen up before they arrive? Taylor offered kindly. I considered the question. Part of me wanted to look more presentable, a deep-rooted urge to appear fine around my family. Another part recognized that my battered appearance told the truth of my experience, a truth they needed to see. No, thank you, I decided. This is what fighting for my life alone looks like. They should see it. When my parents finally arrived, their entrance was exactly as I had predicted. They burst into the ICU during evening visiting hours, my mother immediately launching into an explanation of their delayed arrival. Meredith, darling. The traffic from Chicago was absolutely nightmarish. We came as soon as we could coordinate everything. Rebecca was in such a state we couldn't possibly leave her alone. My father followed behind her, his expression showing genuine shock as he took in my condition. Good God, Meredith. They said accident, but this is. He trailed off, apparently unable to find appropriate words. My mother continued her monologue about their difficult journey while adjusting her designer handbag on the visitor's chair, not sitting, just using it as a purse stand. We had to find someone to stay with Rebecca, of course. She's been having absolute fits about this renovation disaster. The contractor completely misunderstood her vision, and you know how sensitive she is about her living space. We finally got Hannah from next door to check on her. The poor thing was simply beside herself when we said we had to leave. I remained silent, observing them with a detachment that felt entirely new. My mother finally paused, perhaps noticing my lack of response. Sweetie, are you in much pain? You look awful. I was hit by an SUV going 40 miles per hour, I replied evenly. I've had 2 surgeries and I'm fighting a serious infection. What exactly did you expect me to look like? My bluntness startled them. My father stepped closer, his face creased with worry that, despite everything, I recognized as genuine. The hospital called us multiple times, he acknowledged. We should have come sooner. It's just been chaos with Rebecca's situation, and what exactly is Rebecca's situation? I interrupted, my voice strengthening despite the pain. What emergency was so critical that it prevented you from answering calls from an intensive care unit? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. My mother recovered first, her expression shifting to one I recognized well, the look that preceded a minimization of my feelings. Now, Meredith, you know your sister processes emotions differently than most people. The renovation issues triggered a complete meltdown. She couldn't even get out of bed yesterday. The designer used Swiss coffee instead of simply white on the guest bathroom walls, and the lighting makes it look completely wrong with the tile she selected. She's been physically ill over the mistake. The absurdity of her explanation hung in the air between us. Paint colors. My sister had been physically ill over paint colors while I lay intubated in an operating room. I see, I said quietly. And now that you're here, what would you like to know about my condition? The collapsed lung? The internal bleeding? The infection that might still kill me? Or should we continue discussing Rebecca's paint crisis? My father stepped forward, his expression hardening. That's enough, Meredith. We're here now. The doctor told us you're stabilizing. Let's not turn this into another competition between you girls. His words, particularly another competition, confirmed everything. In their eyes, this had never been a medical emergency versus a decorating preference. It was simply their daughters both needing them, with their long-standing preference determining who received care. I'd like to speak with your doctor, my father continued, his business tone emerging. I have questions about your treatment plan and when you might be released. Your mother can stay with you while I find Dr. Garcia. As he turned toward the door, he stopped short. Someone was entering the ICU room, Marcus, carrying his leather bag and wearing a formal suit this time. My father stared at Marcus with obvious confusion. Who are you? He demanded, reverting to the authoritative tone he typically used with service providers. Marcus extended his hand professionally. Marcus Coleman, attorney at law. I represent Meredith. My mother's hand flew to her throat, a theatrical gesture she often employed when surprised. Attorney? Meredith, why on earth do you have a lawyer here? Before I could respond, Marcus answered smoothly, I've been handling Ms. Henderson's legal affairs since yesterday, when it became clear she needed representation during this medical crisis. That's ridiculous, my father scoffed. She doesn't need a lawyer. She needs family. We're her parents. Marcus maintained his professional demeanor. Yes, Mr. Henderson. You're her parents who were unreachable for 36 hours while she underwent emergency surgeries and fought a potentially fatal infection. As her attorney, I've been ensuring her wishes are documented and respected during this vulnerable time. The clinical precision of his summary silenced my father momentarily. My mother rushed to fill the uncomfortable quiet. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. We were dealing with a family emergency and came as soon as we possibly could. There's no need for legal involvement in a private family matter. Marcus placed his bag on the side table and removed a folder. Ms. Henderson has authorized me to inform you of several legal changes she's implemented. First, she has executed new advance directives and medical power of attorney documents. You are no longer her medical decision-makers. That responsibility now belongs to Stephanie Powell. My father's face flushed with anger. You can't be serious. Some friend taking precedence over her parents? This is absurd. Additionally, Marcus continued undeterred, MS. Henderson has instructed me to revise her will and trust documents. You will be receiving official notification of these changes, but the summary is that you are no longer beneficiaries of her estate. Those assets will now be directed toward design education scholarships and selected friends who have demonstrated consistent care for her well-being. My mother's expression transformed from confusion to indignation. Meredith Jane Henderson. What is the meaning of this? We are your family. You can't just replace us with some friends because we were delayed in arriving due to your sister's crisis. The familiar guilt tactics washed over me without effect. The fever had left me feeling strangely detached, observing their reactions as if watching characters in a play I'd seen too many times. What exactly was Rebecca's crisis? I asked quietly. You keep mentioning it without specifics. My parents exchanged glances again. My father spoke first, his tone defensive. Your sister has been working with contractors on her condo renovation. There have been numerous problems with the execution of her design vision. The latest issue involved incorrect paint colors in several rooms, which completely threw off her design concept. She was devastated. Devastated, I repeated. About paint colors. It's not just paint colors, my mother interjected. It's about her entire living environment. You of all people should understand that as a designer. She'd been planning this renovation for months, and these mistakes ruined everything she envisioned. Marcus raised an eyebrow but remained professionally silent, allowing the conversation to unfold. So let me understand clearly, I said, my voice strengthening despite my physical weakness. I was unconscious in an ICU, having emergency surgery for life-threatening injuries, while you were consoling Rebecca about incorrect paint in her guest bathroom. The hospital called you repeatedly about my condition, and you chose to ignore those calls because Swiss coffee versus Simply White was the actual emergency. My father's expression hardened. You're oversimplifying a complex situation. Rebecca needed us. She was having a complete breakdown. And I needed you, I replied simply. I was dying. The stark truth hung in the air between us. For perhaps the first time, I had stopped cushioning my reality to protect their feelings. This is exactly why we've always had to be careful with you girls, my mother said, her voice taking on the martyred tone I knew well. You've always been jealous of the attention Rebecca needs. She processes emotions differently. Her anxiety about this renovation was not more important than your daughter nearly dying alone, Marcus interjected, his professional tone giving way to genuine indignation. MS. Henderson suffered a traumatic accident, underwent multiple surgeries, and developed a serious infection that still threatens her life. The medical staff contacted you repeatedly about time-sensitive decisions. Those are the facts of the situation. My father turned to Marcus with barely contained anger. This is a family matter that doesn't concern you. I think you should leave so we can discuss this privately. Mr. Coleman stays, I stated firmly. He's here at my request, and this is my hospital room. I shifted positions slightly, wincing at the pain, but determined to speak clearly. For my entire life, I've accepted being the second priority. I've forgiven missed milestones, broken promises, and constant dismissal of my feelings. I convinced myself that's just how our family worked. Rebecca needed more, so I should need less. Taking a shaky breath, I continued, but this crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. This wasn't about emotional support or attention. This was about being physically present during a life-threatening emergency. You chose paint colors over my survival, and no amount of explanation changes that reality. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Whether genuine or tactical was impossible to determine after years of witnessing her emotional displays. How can you say such things? We love both our daughters equally. We're here now, aren't we? We drove all the way from Chicago. After my lawyer called, I corrected. Not after multiple hospital calls. Not after my personal calls and messages. You came when there were consequences to ignoring me. My father's posture changed, his business negotiations stance emerging. Meredith, you're upset and in pain, which is understandable. But these legal changes are an overreaction that you'll regret when you're thinking more clearly. Let's take a step back and... He was interrupted by Taylor entering the room with medication. She assessed the tense situation quickly, her professional demeanor firmly in place. I need to administer this medication immediately, she announced. Ms. Henderson's vital signs are showing concerning changes. I'll need everyone to step outside for a few minutes. My father began to protest, but Taylor was firm. This isn't optional. The patient's condition requires immediate intervention. You can continue your conversation after I've completed the necessary treatment. As my parents reluctantly moved toward the door, Taylor added, and please keep in mind that elevated stress can worsen her condition. This is an intensive care unit, not a conference room. Marcus nodded understanding and gathered his materials. I'll be right outside if you need me, Meredith. As the door closed behind them, leaving Taylor and me alone, I closed my eyes briefly in exhaustion. The confrontation had depleted what little energy I had managed to gather. Thank you, I whispered to Taylor as she adjusted my fore. She checked my vital signs with efficient movements. Family dynamics can complicate recovery, she observed neutrally. My job is to protect my patients' well-being, physical and otherwise. As she worked, I realized that in this moment, this nurse I had known for only 2 days had shown more genuine care for my welfare than the parents I had known my entire life. 2 weeks later, I was moved from the ICU to a standard hospital room. The serious infection had finally responded to the aggressive antibiotic treatment, though not without consequences. My kidney function had been temporarily compromised, requiring additional monitoring, but Dr. Garcia was confident about full recovery with time. My physical healing had begun in earnest. The surgical incisions were closing properly, the chest tube had been removed, and physical therapy for my injured leg had commenced. Each small victory, sitting up independently, walking a few steps with assistance, eating solid food again, represented progress toward reclaiming my life. My parents had not returned to the hospital after our confrontation. Their absence was now a choice rather than an oversight, marked only by a terse text message from my father. When you're ready to discuss your decisions rationally, let us know. We're giving you space to recover. No inquiries about my condition accompanied this message. Rebecca, surprisingly, had sent flowers with a card expressing generic well wishes, though she made no attempt to visit or call. The family pattern continued unbroken, minimal effort that could be referenced later as trying without actual involvement or inconvenience. The most significant development in my recovery came when Stephanie returned from Japan. Upon learning of my accident, she had rearranged her entire schedule to return immediately, arriving exhausted but determined at my hospital room. Meredith, my God, she gasped, taking in my condition despite my improved state. I should have been here. I'm so sorry. You came as soon as you knew, I reassured her. That's what matters. Stephanie became a constant presence during my recovery, coordinating with my business associate Alex to manage urgent client matters, bringing comfortable pajamas and toiletries from my apartment, and most importantly, providing the unconditional support I had always sought from my biological family. During one afternoon when I was feeling particularly strong, I shared the entire situation regarding my parents and Rebecca with Stephanie. Though she had known the general dynamics of my family relationships, the specifics of this incident stunned her. "Paint colors," she repeated incredulously. "While you were having emergency surgery. I can't even process that level of... I don't know what to call it. I've spent years trying to find the right word," I admitted. "Neglect feels too strong, indifference too mild. Whatever it is, I've finally accepted it won't change." Stephanie squeezed my hand gently. "You know this isn't normal, right? This isn't how families are supposed to function." "I'm beginning to understand that," I replied. "Your family showed me glimpses of healthy relationships, but I always assumed that was unique to your situation. Now I realize my family is the abnormal one." The most unexpected development came 3 days before my scheduled hospital discharge. Rebecca appeared at my hospital room unannounced, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "Hey," she said awkwardly, hovering in the doorway. "Can I come in?" I nodded, genuinely curious about this unprecedented visit. Rebecca had never sought me out when I wasn't useful to her in some capacity. She sat gingerly on the visitor's chair, avoiding direct eye contact. "You look better than I expected. Mom said you were pretty banged up." "Multiple surgeries and a severe infection will do that," I replied neutrally. "But I'm improving." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until Rebecca finally spoke again. "I heard about the lawyer thing. Dad's pretty upset." "I'm sure he is." She fidgeted with the strap of her designer handbag. "Look, I know how this must seem. The whole paint color thing while you were here. It sounds ridiculous when put that way." "It was ridiculous," I stated plainly. "I nearly died alone because our parents were helping you with interior decorating." Rebecca winced visibly. "When you put it that way." "There's no other way to put it, Rebecca. That's literally what happened." She was quiet for a moment, then surprised me with unexpected candor. "I didn't know how serious it was. They just said you'd been in an accident but were stable. I didn't know about the surgeries or infection until after your lawyer called." This information gave me pause. Had my parents minimized my condition to justify their choices, even to Rebecca? Would it have mattered if you had known? I asked genuinely. Rebecca considered the question with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. "I'd like to think so. We're not close, but you're still my sister. I wouldn't want you fighting for your life alone." She hesitated before continuing. "I've been thinking about things since this happened. About how our family works. About how Mom and Dad have always responded to my issues." "Your emergencies," I clarified. She nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, my emergencies. I've always known they drop everything when I get upset. I guess I never really thought about what they might be dropping." This acknowledgement, however small, represented more self-awareness than Rebecca had ever demonstrated previously. I wasn't prepared to forgive decades of manipulative behavior based on one moment of insight, but I recognized it as potentially significant. "What happens now?" she asked. "With the family, I mean. I'm establishing boundaries," I explained. "Not cutting contact entirely, but no longer expecting or accepting the treatment I've received my entire life. I deserve better." Rebecca nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I am sorry about what happened. Not just this time, but other times too." The apology was imperfect, but appeared genuine, another first in our relationship. As she left, promising to check on me again before discharge, I found myself cautiously open to the possibility that this crisis might catalyze change, at least in my relationship with my sister. The day before my discharge, Stephanie helped me pack the few personal items I had accumulated during my extended hospital stay. "My guest room is all set up," she confirmed. The building has an elevator, so no stairs to worry about with your leg. And I've arranged to work from home for the next 2 weeks to help with your transition. You don't have to do all this, I protested weakly, though profoundly grateful for her support. I know I don't have to, she replied simply. I want to. That's what family does, the family we choose anyway. Her words resonated deeply. Throughout this ordeal, I had been surrounded by people who chose to care, Marcus setting aside other cases to help me immediately, Taylor advocating for my well-being beyond medical care, Dr. Garcia's attentive treatment, and now Stephanie rearranging her life to support my recovery. None of these people were obligated by blood to help me, yet all had demonstrated more genuine care than those who supposedly had a biological imperative to do so. As I prepared to leave the hospital the following day, I reflected on the profound lessons this traumatic experience had taught me. Blood relation doesn't guarantee love or care. Actions, not genetics, define family. Accepting mistreatment doesn't preserve relationships, it only enables their dysfunction to continue. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for emotional survival. The people who show up during crises are your real support system, regardless of what titles they hold in your life. Most importantly, I learned that self-respect requires action. For years, I had internally acknowledged my family's treatment was wrong while externally accepting it. True self-worth demands alignment between what we know we deserve and what we actually accept from others. As Stephanie wheeled me toward the hospital exit, I felt lighter despite my physical limitations. The road to complete recovery would be long, but for the first time, I wasn't carrying the additional burden of unrealistic family expectations and inevitable disappointment. Ready? Stephanie asked as we approached the exit. More than you know, I replied, looking toward the future with newfound clarity and strength. If you've ever had to make difficult decisions about family relationships like I did, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Has someone ever let you down during a crisis when you needed them most? Or have you found that chosen family sometimes provides the support blood relatives don't? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sharing these experiences helps us all feel less alone in our struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember that establishing healthy boundaries isn't selfish, it's an act of self-preservation and self-respect.